Now, Michael, if I can start with you, because I know you need to rush off to 12 other speeches today. It's interesting you were talking about the rise of religion and the problem of homosexuality being respected in other states. I actually read another speech of yours, which was in Hong Kong, which was to the Legal Reform Commission for the Commonwealth. And in that speech, you were asking for people to be respectful of different cultures, that in different cultures they would have a different approach to homosexuality. Now, often that culture seems to be linked very much to the religion. Do you think the religion or the culture is an excuse, I guess, for being slower with legal reform on homosexuality?
Well, you have to be respectful of other people, but I mean, the principles that we now know are based upon science. We know a lot more. Okay, you can be absolutely horrible. Hand up everyone who is left-handed. Disgusting. You should all be rounded up and locked up. It's disgusting. Well, what if we had that sort of attitude? It's ridiculous. And could you then say, oh, well, we've got this attitude, therefore we've got to respect it, it's part of our culture. My brother Donald is left-handed. And when he went to school, they tried to make him write with his right hand. And my mum went up there, God bless her, and she said, don't you dare do that to my son. Well, it's the same with gays or with any other minority group based on indelible features of nature. There is no cultural excuse, I'm afraid. You can have a long dialogue, you can have a lot of conversation, but in the end, there's got to be action.
But don't you think it's quite scary that even in the first world, though, without even looking at the African nations that are struggling with homosexuality like Malawi and that, even in the first world, getting governments to believe in science with issues such as, you know, how was the world created or things like that is hard enough. So even the scientific basis behind it is not taken as it's not accepted, it's not respected as an argument.
Now, the big problem here is AIDS. AIDS is not over. My sister's a nursing sister at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, and she rang me and said, there's a guy who's dying and he's asked to see you. This is 2 weeks ago. I went there, I held his warm hand, and he's dead. He died of AIDS. So AIDS is not over, and in most of the world, it's very much on. There's still 2.7 million people every year infected. And putting these silly laws and maintaining them in place is a barrier to getting into their brains to get behaviour change which will save them from the epidemic. The global fund is going down, infections are going up, and all we've got are these churches of all faiths rabbiting on about issues of morality when we should be trying to save human lives and respect human dignity. Anyway, that's my view, and you're entitled to your view. You're TED people.
We've got a question from the TEDx forum. Cara?
Got a question from David.
Hello. My question is, if the biblical text is wrong on homosexuality, how then do you know that it's right on anything?
Well, that is a fair question, but you know, there is a passage in St. Matthew's Gospel. You remember the story of Barabbas and Jesus. Who will I release unto you? And the passage says that the Jews of this minor town in Judea said, release Barabbas, and as for Jesus, let his blood be on us and on our children. Now, they were the words that were used to support anti-Semitism in the church and in society. But now we read them and we don't see that instruction. And it's a matter of going back to the words and rereading them in the light of the science of today. This is something we do all the time in courts. And if courts can do it with their lovely golden robes and their red Santa Claus outfits, well, a few of the other old gents in frocks can do it. It's about time we encouraged it.
While we're, I'll bring Mary Ariri in here. While we're on religion, it was interesting to hear your speech, which was about tracking Sister Bernadette. I'm quite interested about the fact that the speech was a lot about the Aboriginal spirituality and Leanne and these kind of concepts. And yet it was also about the fact that you had this Sister Bernadette and you had this church in the Aboriginal community. How does the Christian religion and the Aboriginal spirituality fit together in your community?
There are so many similarity between our Aboriginal spirituality and Christian belief. It boils down to the one thing that what is your belief? And there we aim to the one concept, is that it is what you see as a person or a being that that represents the image of God or your faith. And there are similarities between Aboriginal spirituality and Christian, and we aim for the one purpose. Yep.
Now, just there's a bit of a common theme between a couple of the speeches here about land and about the way we react to it. And just before Michael Kirby has to go, I'll start with him and then go to the other two speakers about, because I know you were part of the High Court for the Wick decision. I know you're very proud of the Mabo decision. How do you feel that decision has then, I guess, flowed onto the community? And I'll ask Mary the same question. How do you think those decisions that were made by the court, these kind of breakthrough legal decisions, have actually affected Aboriginals' relationship with the land and their actual capacity to influence it and own it?
Well, first of all, I want to go back to your earlier question, because I think I must make it clear, I'm not against religion. I'm an Anglican Christian. At least the Anglican Church is taking steps to deal with the issue of women in the church and gays in the church. If every Catholic was as wonderful as Sister Bernadette, we wouldn't have any of the problem. Maybe they should just have women priests and not men priests. It might be a good step. Anyway, that's for them. But, and I want to acknowledge the presence here of Malcolm Turnbull, member of the Federal Parliament. He created me, because back in the days, he probably wouldn't want to own up to this, of the Law Reform Commission. He was a journo, and he put me into the bulletin, and he created a monster. And so this is still going strong. Anyway, it's good to see you here, Malcolm. As to the Wick decision, I wasn't party to the Mabo decision. That came before I was on the High Court. But I was the deciding vote in the Wick decision. And I just thought it was a matter of applying the Mabo decision to the new situation of pastoral leases. Has it made a difference? Well, it hasn't made as big a difference as it could have because of the amendments to the Native Title Act. But is it a symbol for us that the Aboriginal people are part of our nation? They were here before our ancestors. They have a claim to land, which is now recognised in the common law and in statute. And it's very important because it's part of giving some moolah. We've got to give some money to the Aboriginal people. You can't just have symbols. And it's very important that it be backed up with financial equality. If they have financial equality, we'll all have equality, and they'll have education, health, housing, and all the other things that they've been deprived of. So I think it's all part of a step of enlightenment. And mark this, ladies and gentlemen, that those who say we don't need a Bill of Rights or a Rights Charter in Australia have to recognise the fact that we had democratic parliaments for 150 years in this continent, and they did not fix up the issue of native title. That was fixed up by the High Court of Australia. And so we can't say Parliament always fixes things up. Sometimes they need a little help from their friends.
So, Mary, what about from your perspective? Do those kind of big decisions that are made in the courts and go through the Parliament, do they have a big effect on the ground? Or is it more, I know you do a lot of, Mary's community does some amazing grassroots things, such as the Blank Page Summit, which is looking at Aboriginal suicide, and each year gets together and looks at those issues. Do you find it's those kind of grassroots things that make the big difference, or do the big decisions that happen in the High Court, and has that also had a flow-on effect to, I guess, making life for Aboriginal people better?
I think it works both ways, and as Honourable Kirby mentioned, Michael, my mate Michael, said that the Aboriginal people needs these essentials, I say that is true, but what we as Indigenous people, how can we too close our own gaps? How can we too work together as people of this country, as citizens of this one nation?
Mary, since you've had your first Blank Page Summit last year, and you're about to have another one this year, is there what's the main thing that you've tried to implement that you think has made a difference in your community?
Well, in West Australia, we have more suicide than road deaths. And in the Kimberley, we have 2 to 3 people dying a week. The idea of coming up with a Blank Page Summit on suicide is through our own tragedy. Our own tragedy. I lost 2 of my brothers who committed suicide in my parents' home, in the same room, under the same fan. And my family could have taken the pathway of destruction. But we thought, no, we have to set goals and create a better future for the next generation. And that means all the people in the Kimberley as well. So we decided to have this Blank Page Summit on suicide, and we had 150 people from all over this country came. And we came together and came up with 3 points from that summit. 3 points. And it was a call for action. The first one is that Indigenous people are fragmented with the alcohol, drugs, and all the destructiveness that they face every day. So the family unity is not strong. So our first call for action was to train families to be families, to create a suicide-proof community, and to have stage support in healing both non-Indigenous ways and Indigenous ways.
I do urge you, look up the Blank Page Summit, Google it, and it is quite amazing. Now, before we go on, I don't want to link to the previous conversation, but I don't want to let Michael go, Michael Cathcart, that is, before we discuss necro-nationalism, which is a nationalism based on a fascination with death, apparently, we have. Now you've got to expand on this a little bit more. Do you think necro-nationalism possibly explains why, as a people, Australians are much more cynical and not so optimistic as perhaps our American friends? Or what effect does this idea of necro-nationalism have on the psyche of a people?
Well, I think one thing it does is it gives us a talent for doing Anzac well. I'm not cynical about Anzac. You know, Anzac is not really a glorification of war, although it can be in some people's hands. Anzac is a very sad and reflective day, a day in which many stories coincide. So I think we do it well because we were schooled by 100 years of necro-nationalism to the idea that our stories lay in the death of the young. But I mean, what we're hearing here from Mary is reminding us that suicide and the urge to suicide is a profoundly unhealthy, anti-human impulse. So I think necro-nationalism in the broad was an unhealthy impulse in the 19th century, and that's why I say that this desire to irrigate Australia was a positive, life-affirming impulse, even though we all know that it came at an enormous cost.
You talk also about this kind of battle we have with nature, and particularly about water. Do you see, when you see a city like Adelaide, which literally is running out of water and is almost going to be extinct, do you see this as a possible, that nature will triumph over us and with this battle for water in the
No,
next few
I don't,
years?
because you see, I don't think we should have this opposition of people and nature. I think that people live in nature, and that's, you know, the great Indigenous, I don't want to speak for Indigenous culture, but that's the great Indigenous lesson to me, that culture and nature are the same thing, and that Western civilization tends to put nature in the park. I want to say that nature is on the high street, that a city is part of nature. So when
even Adelaide.
Even Adelaide.
Even Adelaide.
But they don't know it. You know, they don't collect the rainfall that falls on the Mount Lofty ranges. They just don't collect it because they haven't thought about their close relationship to nature.
Yeah, after many years, and I mean, you live in a much harsher part of the country and yet don't have a problem with nature, and yet we have problems with nature in the most highest rainfall areas. So I'm just going to go back to Cara. Do we have another question, Cara?
We have a quick statement from Frederick.
Hi, thank you very much for coming. I have a radio program called Sustainable Synergy, so it's really looking at cohesion of all the different viewpoints that you have. And I want to say all of these different segregations that we've grown up with, if we look at the core of where this all comes from, why we have the differentiation, why we think we have to be better than other people, and then I think once we resolve that, we won't have these differences anymore, and we'd rather work together than anything else. That's whether it's gays or Aborigines or even looking at water. It's just what I think.
Thank you for your comment. Although it's interesting when we talk about everyone agreeing. Just to go back to Michael Kirby, it has been a kind of a ridiculous week in Australia whereby a lot of issues of homosexuality have come up, and I guess views that we would have thought were gone many years ago have suddenly come out. It's almost as if there's still a very strong mainstream homophobia that is kind of kept bubbling underneath. Did you get that feeling, Michael?
You need leadership on these things. You need leadership from both political sides. Premier Keneally did not go into the Parliament to vote in the law on relationships register. I mean, it's not a big thing, but she wasn't there. I think the Leader of the Opposition, Barry O'Farrell, didn't make a comment. So to that extent, they're both sort of neutral. But that's neutrality in not taking a positive stand and saying enough is enough. I think we should have less interviews of politicians at churches. I really think that used to happen in Australia, but now they're all turning up at church and they're all being interviewed at church. We should say to them, we don't believe you should mix up your religious belief with a public manifestation of it and being interviewed at church and trying to get the background of the church to bring some respectability to yourself. If you wanted to attack the minister for his public transport policies, I could give you a few points. Now I've lost my Commonwealth cars, I'm back on the trains and the buses, and I could give some points. Let's deal with him on that basis, not on the basis of homophobic attitudes bound up in religion. It's got to stop.
Thank you so much.
60 years.
Thank you so much, Michael Kirby. Thanks to my guests, Michael Kirby, Mary Victor O'Reilly and Michael Cathcart. Thank you very much.